The year 2024 is winding down. It was a year of hope, gloom, and quite eventful. Nigeria began the year with inflation figures spiking non-stop to end at 34.6%. Now, the exchange rate also grew exponentially because Nigeria started the year actually as one of the worst performing currencies in the globe, being benchmarked and tracked. Do I say the national grid collapsed for each month of the year? Perhaps I'll be correct in that. But then, it was a year that we had issues around climate change, security, the Olympics, and much more, ultimately shaping it. But how did it affect you? How did these policy actions affect you as a citizen of this country? We'll be delving into this matter in a bit, but that will be after we return from the trends table. President Bola Tinubu has presented the 2025 proposed budget of 49.7 trillion naira to the joint session of the National Assembly, christened Budget of Restoration, Securing Peace, Rebuilding Prosperity. The federal government projects a revenue of 34.82 trillion naira and a deficit of 13.08 trillion naira. It plans to spend 15.81 trillion naira on debt servicing. Defense and security takes the largest allocation of 4.91 trillion naira, followed by infrastructure with 4.06 trillion naira, education 3.52 trillion naira, and health 2.46 trillion naira. The proposed budget is anchored on an oil production rate of 2.06 million barrels per day, an exchange rate of 1,500 naira per dollar, while inflation rate is pegged at 15%. The Senate this week passed the Nigerian Insurance Industry Reform Bill 2024, a development that has excited the industry regulator, the National Insurance Commission, NICAM. The passage follows the adoption of the report by the Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions during Tuesday's plenary session, presented by the committee's chairman, Senator Abiru Adetokunbo. On capital requirement enshrined in the bill, a person shall not carry on insurance business in Nigeria unless the insurer has and maintains, while carrying on that business, certain minimum capital. The bill also proposes a penalty of 25 million naira for individuals found operating unlicensed insurance businesses in the country. The National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) has revealed that Nigerians paid a whopping 2.23 trillion naira as ransom between May 2023 and April 2024. This sum was paid by households affected by kidnapping incidents, highlighting the growing threat posed by criminal activities in the country. The NBS's latest Crime Experience and Security Perception Survey report estimates that 51.89 million crime incidents were recorded across Nigerian households in the reference period. The Northwest region, with 14.4 million cases, had the highest incidence of crime, followed by North Central with 8.8 million incidents, while the Southeast region reported the least crime with 6.18 million incidents. Rural areas with 26.53 million crime incidents were more affected by crime compared to 25.36 million in urban areas. The report highlighted the severity of kidnapping, with 4.14 million households experiencing home robbery. The Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) has reviewed its guidelines to prescribe 3-year jail terms for Nigerian celebrities and social media influencers who promote cryptocurrency platforms and assets without labeling their posts as sponsored content. This review was necessitated by numerous reported scams orchestrated by cryptocurrency platforms, which were highly promoted by public figures with large followers. Finfluencers who receive compensation to promote digital asset products or services now must disclose these arrangements to their followers. The directive states that failure to do so will result in a penalty of not less than 10 million naira imprisonment for up to 3 years, or both. This comes as citizens count their losses after investing in fraudulent crypto platforms promoted by popular entertainment figures whom they trust and eventually got led to blindly invest in content posted on social media without conducting additional research. SEC has also mandated celebrities and influencers to do their due diligence in verifying that their crypto client is SEC licensed and approved before promoting their content. The Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) has set a daily withdrawal limit of 100,000 naira per customer on point of sale (POS) terminals as part of its ongoing efforts to advance a cashless economy. This new restriction was announced in a circular titled Cash Out Limits for Agent Banking Transactions directed to all deposit money banks (DMBs), microfinance banks, mobile money operators, and super agents. CBN in the directive explained that the measure is intended to address operational challenges, reduce fraud, and establish uniform standards across the country. The regulator also outlined several key directives that all agents must follow while insisting that agent banking services are clearly demarcated from merchant activities. The circular emphasized the need for strict compliance and warned that any violations will attract appropriate penalties, including monetary and/or administrative sanctions, especially on the financial institutions. Nigeria's first inflation numbers, which was released early in the year, was 28.92%, and the Central Bank of Nigeria held on to the growth to ensure that the monetary policy rate was held firm and was tightened in a bid to tame the growth, but it ended the year with the rates being tightened, but clearly that tightening did not tame inflation.
Even when interest rate was low, how many small businesses really could have access to lending with banks? Because one, we don't have a proper credit rating system in the country. Two, because also there's this mutual distrust between borrowers and the lenders, in this case, the bank and the customers. So you will be asked to bring collaterals that are unthinkable just because you want to have access to funds to do business. And this is the reality of the situation. Or should I even talk about interest rates? Eventually, when you get it, you are asked to bring 28, 25, 30%. That is the case of dealing with a proper bank. When you are dealing with money lenders, you might have to bring 120%, or you have to bring 180%. For instance, 10% per month. That's 120%. 20% per month, that's 140%. The question is, which business are we going to do to have this kind of returns in Nigeria?
If Nigeria is exporting, the devaluation of Naira is necessary. Because if you devalue when you are an exporting nation, the cost of your goods is cheaper outside your country, and you sell more. The economy booms. You generate more foreign exchange. But if you are importing and your currency is devalued, the cost of goods and services in your country will be higher. And the main target of any government is to deliver socio-economic service. Socio-economic service means myself, how I will be able to get electricity, how I will be able to get water, how I will be able to get road, and how I will be able to feed myself. These are the socio-economic services, the key. There are others. But even if you do any other thing and I cannot feed myself, so all other things you have done means nothing to me. Transportation of goods and services is a key problem, because if you look at the whole country, you look at all the road network in the country, you see that you cannot produce goods in Kano and take it down easily to Lagos, because too many things are there. The road is so bad. The people connecting money on the road are so much, and you may stay on the road for 2-3 days from Lagos to Kano. If the railway is working, it's a twinkle of some hours, and it goes down there.
The year ended the rates high, with biting cash crunch, as well as reduced purchasing power.
This is a country where studies have shown that the ordinary man in the street, the average Nigerian, spends over 90% of his income on food. So you can see that a lot of families, as we speak, are going through tough times because of rising inflation. So how does the central bank want to deal with it? The central bank is, thinks it can deal with it by further tightening policy and including through raising the monetary policy rate, which is what they have done. What's the motive that drives businesses? We often say it's profit, isn't that so? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the rational businessman is not doesn't think in terms of morals, doesn't think in terms of patriotism. All he wants is to make profit.
If the authorities refuse to subsidize, that might be too harsh on the citizens. That will make the cost of living to go through the roof, as we have seen in recent times, and it will be unbearable for majority of Nigerians. Mind you, we live in poverty central. So many Nigerians, hundreds of millions of Nigerians live below the poverty line, and if you don't subsidize, their situation will be far worse. The last time they just threw money at problems, that will not work. You need to be intentional. You need to go after results. The results are what really matter, not the efforts.
The first MPC for the year was held in February, and at that meeting, the MPR was raised by as much as 400 basis points to 22.75%, and by the last meeting for the year, MPR had risen to 27.5%. The Naira started the year as one of the worst performing currencies on the globe.
Having put in a unified economy is supposed to remove all imperfections. It's a market-driven, mechanism to checkmate, lack of transparency and accountability in the foreign exchange market. But with a caveat, and what is that caveat is that for you to liberalize, for you to make it willing buyer and willing seller, you must be able to have some buffers. That is the reason why many countries adopt the unification or the liberalization or the concept of willing buyer and willing seller. However, in our own case, we're lacking in those buffers to support the idea, even though government is trying a lot to see that they encourage investors to come in, and they're also doing some local measures in terms of encouraging people.
The currency debate will drag into the end of the year, even as Nigeria issued her first dollar-denominated local paper.
So there are international mechanisms utilized to create imbalance in other economies, and Nigeria is one of them. If you issue $500 million worth of domestic bonds, how would you source dollars when the exchange rate depreciates? How would you source money in dollars to pay the principal and the interest? Mm-hmm. You are also ceding your capacity as a sovereign state to manage the monetary policy that is quintessentially yours. You're ceding it to the country whose currency you're trying to issue securities in.
Food stayed expensive. Government promised to subsidize imports and sell staples at reduced rates, but clearly that impact was not felt. Now, in one of our early episodes for the year, renowned policy reformist Dr. Joe Abba sums it up as bad policies.
Sometimes people do those things deliberately because it is easier to get corrupt enrichment in chaos. Right? If things are planned properly, it's more difficult for you to gain corrupt enrichment from them. People say, oh, our problem is implementation. But we implement bad things very well when we want to. Our problem is actually mostly bad policies. to do public service reforms, you need to be an optimist. You need to believe that things can get better. And I believe that they can.
He even predicted a poor performance by the Nigerian Olympic team at the competition. Of course, 2024 was an Olympic year, and the Nigerian Olympians did not return a single medal. The Paralympians, on the other hand, did not turn in the usual medal hauls as expected.
We've got used to doing things the wrong way. We've got used to announcing policies before we think about how to implement those policies. So those things we've just become used to doing, and it's not going to reverse overnight, because a lot of it is a mindset issue. That's why if you see, even going back to sports, if you see how we prepare for competitions, you think, oh, but we knew 4 years ago that we're going to go for this competition. Why the last minute rush? Why are people's allowances not getting paid? Why is the flights not arranged on time? And you think about that and think, oh, maybe it's just incompetence and bad implementation. It's not. It's bad policy.
Like, for favor, I think the question will linger until somebody is brought out for punishment. After the games, there should be a searchlight on. Who are these federation officials? Who are they? How did they get there? The truth is, we are good planners, but we don't execute well.
Bad implementers.
You will hear a lot of plans now, a lot of nice talk. People say, and then heavens will fall on this, on that, on that. And then nothing will happen. They will share their Easter code and vanish and wait for other tournaments to come. If you pick AFN, some people are there. Since they left running, they have been there. And they squeeze you out, even with your brightest idea. Minister, clean out the federation. Seek for a way to do it nicely. For as long as these federations are left the way they are, this same result will be replayed over and over again. Olympics come, Olympics go.
2024 is ending with no repercussions whatsoever for the failure of Nigeria to perform as expected at the Olympics. And in fact, the president eventually will scrap that ministry and hand over his activities to the National Sports Commission. But somewhere along the line, badminton produced the first ever medal in that sport for not only the country but the continent. Eniola Bolaji turned home from the Olympics in Paris this year with what is termed as the golden bronze, the first ever medal for that sport in the SL3 Women Para-Badminton event.
So at that point, it dawned on me that Eniola was no longer a Nigerian but an African. The whole continent had taken ownership, and so it just made me realize how enormous that achievement was, how huge it was, as a matter of fact. So I will confess that before she went for the Paralympics, everybody was looking up to her to come home with a medal. I was confident she was going to win the gold medal. She ended up with a bronze, so we all called it the golden bronze. It meant a whole lot to us because no African had done it. It was almost like, oh, no African could win a medal, be it at the Olympics or the Paralympics. It's not just that. We always go there and we get beaten very badly. In badminton, 21-2, 21-5, we never win any match or any game, and we lose in the first round. If you don't have the facilities, you don't have the infrastructure, it's very difficult. A sport that doesn't have a home, if you are homeless, then it gives you an idea of what to expect. So I can tell you today categorically that in Nigeria, there's no single badminton facility, not one. What we have are multi-purpose halls, table tennis, basketball, badminton, gymnastics, boxing, taekwondo, all of them in one. Now I went to China and they took me around. I went to a badminton facility that had 22 courts under one roof. People train there, and you expect us who train in this kind of environment, how can we compete? So that's why there seems to be a huge gap, especially in badminton.
2024 is a year of campaign for reforms to address basic responsibilities of government like security, housing and shelter. Along with it came 4 tax reform bills presently in the National Assembly, and the tax debate is going to drag into the year 2025.
Before now, in line with Schedule 7 of the Nigerian Constitution, there are taxes that federal government can collect, there are taxes that the state can collect, and there are taxes and levy that the local government can collect. That is further backed up by law with Tax and Levy Act, that is 1993. So what government is doing in this new bill, the reason why the conversation is high is because it is an unprecedented bill. It's something that has never happened in the history of Nigeria. The law seeks to repeal the Nigerian Custom Establishment Act, Federal Inland Revenue Establishment Act, and to form a single body that will be responsible to collect all the government revenue. So you see, within a year, we have a regulation that is controversial, in good in a bit, on when the commencement period should start, and then we also have a tax bill within a year. So government is focusing on this because they want to generate revenue. They are increasing the minimum wage. They need to service debt. And it may really shock you. I need to call your attention to this. In 2024 budget, 45% of the budget of what it was proposed to receive as revenue is to service loan. So, and government is still taking more loan. So there is a financial commitment, responsibility on the government to service debt, the loan they are borrowing, and to also spend more in terms of development.
Nigerians will blame the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund for advising authorities on tough policy decisions without commensurate directions to mitigate the impact of those reform decisions. Of course, we took on the country representative of the IMF on this show.
So there is a lot of pain for Nigerians, and that's why in the report we insist on the sequencing of reform. These implicit subsidy, we are saying, you phase them out in a manner that protects the most vulnerable. You do it gradually, but before you even do that, you better strengthen your social protection system. We think that it's very important that amendments done around the Central Bank Act of 2007, that those amendments still protect the independence, the operational independence, independence of tools of the central bank, the functioning of the central bank. This independence has to be protected while these amendments are being done. Crypto platforms in Nigeria should be licensed in Nigeria or regulated or registered.
For African countries to do exactly what you are saying, they need huge financial resources, which they don't have. They need to go to international markets, but then you go to international markets and the rules are not very favorable. The hurdles you have to jump are very, very high. There's this perception of risk. African countries are high risk, so they have to pay more and the hurdles have to be high. And I always say it creates a vicious cycle. So you say African countries are high risk, so you give them higher hurdles to jump over, the higher interest rates. But it's because of those higher interest rate hurdles that they eventually default.
In the second phase of this review, we'll be looking at other aspects like international relations, trade, power, social justice, inclusion, and of course, climate change. But for now, let's head to the education segment, Simplify These, and from there, markets. And that wraps up this episode for the program. But of course, you can always log on to our sister website, www.marketnigeriatv.com. We have all the details there for you from markets and other beautiful Nigerian stories. And don't forget, the Policy with Leah is available on YouTube on our channel. It is at Saban Media Services. We want to thank you for being a special part of our 2024, for all the support, the reviews, and of course your suggestions to help us serve you better. And ultimately, we say a big thank you to our broadcast partners, Kaftan TV. Thank you for staying with us. Until we come your way again, enjoy the holiday season, compliments of the season, and God bless Nigeria.